Yeah, cool. Okay. No worries.
Okay, looks like we're recording.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. So thanks for joining me today, Ian, all the way from Inverell. I'd really like to talk to you about your hairdressing career and also some other little bits and pieces about what you might have seen over the years. So, if you wouldn't mind starting me, tell me what got you into hairdressing and a little bit about your journey.
All right. Made me think about this the other day, get a bit emotional, talking about it. My sister, I lived on a dairy farm on Dumflat out near Copeton Dam. I was 15, didn't fit the dairy farm mould. We used to show Jersey cattle, and I used to spend all my time preparing the most beautiful Jersey tails you've ever seen in your life. So every morning, if I was at the dairy, I'd go over, plait them up, we'd go back in the afternoon, take them out. So they always had these great, big, fluffy white tails, which was great. One day, my sister, who was 16 years older than me, I used to fiddle with her hair a little bit, but didn't know what I was doing. We'd buy the box dye, we'd shove it in, we'd do all that sort of stuff. She came home one day and I was about 2/3 of the way through year 10. And she said, "Got your job?" I said, "Sorry?" She said, "Got you a job?" I said, "Doing what?" She said, "You start on Monday, you're hairdressing." I went, "Oh, hell. All right, cool." Now, I've never been to a ladies' hairdressing salon in my life. I used to fight my parents to get a haircut from a barber if I was lucky. Failing that, my dad would do it with the Jersey cow clippers. Great. Anyway, so Monday I rolled into a salon called Rolling Brothers. They had a staff, they had 5 barbers and about 18 ladies hairdressers, like 18 in the salon. So it was a big concern.
So where was that located?
In Jack's Arcade in Inverell, opposite sort of where Hot Ewan's, where IGA are, that sort of thing. There's an arcade now where the gym is.
Yep.
It took up nearly one whole side of that arcade. It was massive. It was really cool. So in the days of real hairdressing, upstyling, perming, cutting, nothing more. There's no real training. It was just everyone got in. They had the complete hierarchy from seniors right down to juniors, this sort of thing. Big learning curve for me. I was shocked. I mean, I'd never been into anything like it. They threw a white coat on and said, "Go." I could sweep a floor and that was about it. I worked with some very interesting people. Some are still friends and we still catch up after all that time. And that's a long while ago. I did my apprenticeship there. That was in the days of 4 years. It was interesting. I think I remember doing my first haircut in the salon in my 3rd year, and pretty gruesome. I was so desperate to get a pair of scissors on something. The client actually was fly blowing. She had gags, literally. And I was so desperate to do a haircut. By the time I got to 3rd year, I would cut anything. By then you'd hand it up to 200 or 300 perms a day, It was just so monotonous. And there was no training program. You were scrubbing skirting boards with a toothbrush and you were doing all that sort of stuff. So then from there, that went on to where the end of your apprenticeship came, and the guy who owned the salon, who's still alive and in a retirement home in Ballina now, and is a nice man, but they just had different ideas on how to run a business. He always said, "Oh, I really want male hairdressers. They don't get pregnant, they don't leave, they don't do this." I was in a serious relationship with my wife, and well, not wife then, girlfriend. And the day I finished my apprenticeship, he put me off because they didn't want senior hairdressers because they had 6 or 8 apprentices. So he kept in senior hairdressers at the top, and anyone in between, you just got shafted. So I went, "God, I've finished my apprenticeship and I virtually know nothing." I could do stuff. I could do a perm, I could do things, but I definitely wasn't what I call trained. So I didn't know what to do. So I just looked around, and then I heard of a girl in Texas, just over the border in Queensland, who had a salon and she'd closed down to have a baby. So I went, "There's a go." So I went down, had a look at that. She didn't have a shop, she was at home. So I rented a business in the main street of Texas for $10 a week. I rented her equipment for $5 a week, and very quickly learned how to speak basic Italian, because a lot of the people there, the tobacco growers and all this sort of stuff. So I lived there for probably 18 months and I learned a lot real quick.
Yeah.
I learned you could go to the chemist next door and buy a Tony perm and put in your own bottle, and you could still do a perm. Because getting stock was really hard.
Yeah.
Any stock I wanted, I then had to come back to the salon in Inverell where I'd left, and I had to get some stock from there. So I learned a lot really quickly, and it was, you know, baptism of fire. It was really interesting. So then after about 18 months, he decided that mightn't have been the best move, and he wanted me to come back, which I was more than willing to, because we were getting engaged. Texas wasn't the place where I wanted Deb to be. There were no jobs for her and that sort of thing. So then I came back, worked for him. He opened another salon, which I ran with another girl. We worked there for about 2.5 or 3 years. And then I sort of started to realise I needed to do something for myself. So my plan, I approached him to buy his business, which at that stage was still quite large, but different to what it was in the time. And that went on for another 2 years. And it became obvious that he wasn't going to sell it to me. So I then moved in and opened my own small salon and went from there. It's been going like that now for 35 years. So
Wow.
on a dairy farm and doing cow's tails.
That's amazing. It's a great story. I love it. Yeah.
I then went on to spend a lot of time as well as hairdressing and grooming dogs. We showed dogs for years. When I
Wow.
Afghan hounds, poodles, everything has involved preparing a coat, really. It's sort
of, wow.
Yeah, so it was really
fantastic.
Good. Yeah.
So when you said there wasn't the training, so you're still under an apprenticeship, but there wasn't necessarily a TAFE college. It wasn't a training through a TAFE college. It was on the job in that form.
It was before TAFE existed outside of Sydney.
Yeah.
I, myself, and none of us at that stage ever went to TAFE.
Yeah.
When you finished your apprenticeship, examiners would come around and you would do practical models in front of them. So you have to do a perm, do a colour, sort of thing, and finger waves. Oh my God. I was lucky my mother had really naturally wavy hair. That's the only reason I passed them. They would come around and examine you, and that was it. There was nothing as far as the science of hairdressing. For me, which has always been a bit of a black spot, because I know how things happen. I just don't know what makes them happen.
Yes.
But, I mean, always been one of those things, where as far as staff that have trained and gone to TAFE, I'm always grateful because they know that. And I can say, hey, what makes that happen? And they've been able to tell me. That it's, you learn, but in those days, there was a black hole about the science of hairdressing. Which we were the same as everyone else then.
Yeah, so I suppose you just really knew that if I did X, I'd get Y, but as to what's happening and the connection of what's going on in the hair is just a little bit of a gap. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Those with my age, unless they're in Sydney, would be the same.
Yeah.
That's never been a real problem. I just know years ago we used to do experiments. Like, I remember there was an old product called, do you remember Zotos?
Yes, I do. Gosh.
Mixed developer with Zotos. That didn't work.
Okay. And you knew that you needed your solution before the neutralizer, or it didn't work.
You knew that, but how it worked, you didn't know. And,
the
amazing products out there. I think, I wonder how you work. But no one does. Right?
Yeah. So, that's fantastic. I love that. And I love that sort of, I think that's one thing that I love about hairdressing so much is that curiosity. So we can give something a try within safety, knowing that we're not going to permanently damage the hair or anything, but there's that experiment, isn't it?
I'm big into that. That was always how you try it out.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I've seen with you over the years that I really respect, is that you're always willing to have some training sessions, to ask the questions. I've had a few of those late night calls of, oh my God, we're doing this. How do I fix this? Or what do I do? Or why is this happening? And I love that, even after all of these years, you're still so open to education. Do you think that's your background? Do you think because you didn't have that? Yeah.
I spent a lot of time early on with a guy called Robert Bauman, who you probably know of, and has passed away. And he said something once. He said, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
Yep.
And I've never been afraid to go to things. A lot of people sit there and say, I wish I'd asked that. And even if I know, I'll still ask a question, because I probably figure there's someone on the other side of the room who wants to know and hasn't got the guts to ask.
Yeah.
And I learned that very early on, that, you've got to ask the questions or no one will tell you the answers.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
And, you're not even learning just from your people at a senior level either. I love that you are saying that your apprentices that are going to TAFE, the ones that you've put through, that they'll come back and you certainly will ask them a question. So you're willing to even learn from them, which is just amazing. I think that's a great trait.
I never had the time to go, and I sort of thought about starting TAFE, and I thought, oh God, I haven't got time for that. So you just spend away and then just, sponge it off them when they come home.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Or while they're doing something, you just ask the questions, don't you? Yeah. Yeah, and get your head around it. Yeah. So you're saying then from there you looked at opening your own salon. So is that where you are at the moment in Cebu? No. So there must be a little bit of a step in between.
Step in between. I moved and opened, my salon was called Fringe Benefits, and had started off with myself and then an apprentice and a very unwilling wife, but that's okay. She didn't last long. She got a bit stressed. And we were in the back of an little arcade now. It does sort of exist further on down the street. So it was like the usual growth. It went from 1 to, I think in there we got up to about, and it was in those days where you were young, you had the time, and we had kids who were modelling and we're doing comps and this. And I think we grew to about probably the maximum of about 8 staff in that small area. Which was pretty compacted, this sort of thing. I was there for probably 8-9 years. And then we moved out of that arcade down onto a shop on the corner, which, if you know the street opposite, diagonally across from Best and Less, basically on that.
Oh, yeah.
There is, I think it's there now, where Hayley has her salon.
Yeah.
And there's been a few salons in there since. And we're in there for about another probably 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And that was good. And then I sort of got to the stage where things were changing. The dynamic of employing people, which this is where my sort of bitterness starts. It became very much about, I was standing around working my guts off and they were sort of watching me. And when you tried to tell them they had to do more work, they thought they were just making you more money. And that wasn't the case. You were just keeping them in a job.
Yeah.
I work by myself now, and I unfortunately find I'm probably financially as productive as what I was then.
Yeah,
but it was about people employed, and I love the dynamic of working with a group of people, because let's go through the hairdressing industry. Most of the people you work with are really, really interesting. I've worked with some of the most interesting people in the world, and I love it. And that's what I sometimes miss when you're not around a big staff. So I sort of got on a bit of a wayward thing with that. I started really enjoying gardening, doing garden design, all this sort of stuff. So I figured I had to change a bit because I wasn't happy where I was. I mean, I went through a period of stage where a senior left, and then over the next 18 months, she poached 4 of my senior staff. So it sort of took the fire out of my belly a bit.
Yeah.
And I know that happens, but I'm no different than anyone else. It just really just sucked a bit out of me. So I then decided I really enjoyed garden, landscape design, all this sort of stuff. So my idea then was to find my own premises and incorporate that into the salon. So we moved to the other end of the street. I bought a little old house, set it up, and never probably expected the hairdressing component to be as busy as it was. We thought, we're right out of the street, nothing's going to happen. I'll do hair 2 or 3 days a week, and I'll sell plants and pots and all the lovely garden designer things all the way along. Didn't work like that. Because we were out of the street, and about the same time the council introduced lined parking into the street, it really influenced a lot of people how they could do it. I'm not saying that's the reason, but I've always said if they put line parking in front of my shop, I'll go out and paint it out, because the older clients and that, they can just come down, they might miss the tree, but they might hit something else. No, it's a comfortable area to be, but the actual component of the landscaping, that just became a nuisance. The salon part was growing and this sort of stuff, and we had 4 staff. I'd combined with another girl from up the street who was the same. She'd had a big shop, didn't want to do so. We actually combined that into Cebu. We still trade as our business names, but we trade under Cebu. So no one had a preference name. So we had 2 there. We've gone on. There's 3 of us there now doing chair rental. And we all work under our own names, but trade under Cebu. So Bunnings came, the competitive part of the garden part was a bit hard. So we sort of got rid of that. Now we do fashion and some jewelry and clothing and that sort of thing. So love it. It's great like that. Really good. But it's a process to get along to there. But that's where I lost that thing when I thought, and one girl came back to me only 2 or 3 years ago, and she said, I finally understand what you're trying to do. She said it wouldn't make you any more money because she'd moved on. She'd owned her own salon. She'd had the kids. She said, you really were trying to just keep us in jobs. I said, yeah, because you don't really genuinely, I don't think you make any more money. You just have a lot more fun when you've got a group of people around you and you feed off the growth and that sort of thing. And that's what the industry has unfortunately changed, where probably 10 or 15 years ago, if you said to the kids, okay, we're going to do a fashion parade and we'll do this, we'd all get in and do it at night and all this sort of thing. No one was worried about, oh, well, that's not overtime.
Yeah.
Not doing it. And that's where I find the industry has changed, not for the better, but it's not just the industry, it's probably the world, I think. Kids aren't prepared to put a bit of their own time in, and it's all their own training, it's
it's for their own benefit, isn't it? And that's something that I was going to touch on with you. What's one of the biggest changes, and I think that fundamental, I think twofold fundamental basic trainings sort of gone missing, hasn't it? That there's the training nights. I can remember doing training nights, and then the second part of that was the competitions. Competitions were rife. Like if you weren't in a competition every second weekend, there was something wrong. And that training as well. And I really do think, me personally, really honed my skills in those times, in those extra training sessions that we did at work, but also then on top of that, even more training if we had competitions coming up. And it's a real shame.
It's a shame. Like I had another ex-staff member come. She has her own home salon here and she runs it very well and it's beautifully set up. And she came to me probably only 6 or 8 months ago and she said, when can we do something? She said, I really miss that. And she was probably the last of those kids that would put the time in. We'd buy pizza and beer and, like I sat down one day and worked out how much we spent in a year on after hours food and drink, and it was huge. But we had so much fun. And she just said, I want to do something, and I miss that, and she's in her 40s. And, I said, oh, Stacey, I haven't got the time or the energy.
That's the thing. And I wonder... What was that? Sorry?
I realise how good that was.
Yeah. And I think that, the new generation, they need that spark, the younger ones coming through that have missed that. It would be so great to have that spark back in them. I think one of the reasons that I'm also doing the podcast and talking to everyone as well is just to inspire the younger generation that hairdressing just isn't a secondary career. It's actually equal career. There's so much emphasis put on go to uni that it seems to be a second-rate career, that choice. Yeah. But I don't want them to see that. I want them to see with these amazing people that are local people like you that have done certain things, and then, talking to international guests and what they've done. Let's get the spark back in the industry and inspire and see what we can do. Yeah.
One of the most interesting changes I found when I was first working, every holiday you would have an exit of clients who would go to the coast and have their hair done at the coast or in Sydney or Brisbane or something like that, because that was so much better. And over a period of time, I set out in my own head to change that. And other people like Shane Hardman, a prime example, I think we talked about it one day and we said we set out to make sure that country hairdressing was as good or better than the city hairdressing situation. Yeah. Now I think it's great now because I have clients who, oh God, no, I'm going on holidays. Please don't make me go back to the city, because they know they're being overcharged, over-serviced, and generally not satisfied with what they're doing. And this is one of those things. I remember Shane and I got pretty close to being able to present a section at Hair Expo primarily on country hairdressers. It never quite got there, which was a pity, because it would have been, I think we would have done a bloody good job of it. It was, I think the whole thing became too big eventually, but that was something that I think we could have done really well, because Shane has been an extremely creative person. The competitions are great. The competitions between all of us were fabulous. We're all friends, but my God, don't get in our road on the day. But,
yeah, that's so true.
I was like Brian Condon, just, the actual pure cutting technique and the practice he did was amazing. You know,
yeah, that real discipline, wasn't there? There was that real discipline about this is where we start, this is where we're going. We've got the picture at the beginning of where we're ending up, you know, that, and yeah, so much respect for someone like Brian who did do that, you know, that really, bless him, you know, he was still so known around the region for his training. And if anyone came out of Coronet, Brian's salon back in the day, you knew that they were fantastic hairdressers. They were trained within an inch of their fingers bleeding, you know.
I remember, I think it was, I can't remember her name. He lives in Port Macquarie. She said a good training session with Brian was no good unless you cried.
Yeah.
You know? But you know, he was exactly that. I used to send clients and make appointments for them if you're going to Tamworth, and I'd book them into Brian to have a haircut.
Yeah.
It was cheap to do that.
Yeah.
And come back and just, you know, pull the haircut apart and examine it and this sort of stuff. I was very lucky early on in the days of hairdressing really changing when it was, when Sassoons first came out. And I went, I think I was maybe third year apprentice, something like that. Saved up enough money to go to Sydney, had never been to Sydney. Down and went to a Sassoon seminar. And this is where I always learned to put your hand up at something. You know, if you're asked a question or you want to know, put your hand up. Anyway, they were going through talking about who had come so far because they were blown away by the distances in Australia. They couldn't understand how far people had come. And this is in the days, you know, they're really doing the really heavy Sassoon haircuts that we had never seen. That was just crazy. And they said, oh, how far has everyone come to watch today? And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. In the end, I put my hand up and they said, oh, how far did you come? I said, oh, we drove 8 hours yesterday. And they said, what? You know, anyway, I said, oh, we came 8 hours yesterday because my actual boss was going down. So I went down with him. And they couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
You know, when it was nearly to the end, the guy who was running it was a guy called Christopher Brooker. And he was the director for Sassoons then. He said, don't leave. I need to talk to you. I said, oh, sheesh, what have I done wrong? And he came and said, did you really drive 8 hours? I said, yeah. And I said, we'll go back tomorrow. He said, that's insane. He said, that would get us from one end of England and back again.
Absolutely, yeah.
He said, do you have to go home? And I said, why? And he said, could you stay for a couple of days? And I said, and do what? And he said, hang out with us for a couple of days. And I did. So I had 2 days in Sydney with the Sassoon team, just watching them prepare for things. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. You know,
wow.
Started doing these haircuts that were just like nothing anyone had ever seen. I remember cutting my boss's wife's hair. And of course, we didn't even have blow dryers. Like you didn't have a blow dryer. You didn't have one. We had this weird hot comb thing that used to blow air through it. But I think they used to use it for waving or something. But I was using that for a blow dryer. And I'd cut the classic, you know, Sassoon short box bob and was trying to do that. And I remember I hit her in the corner of the eye and cooked the skin out of the corner of her eye. But very shortly after, we got blow dryers, thank God. But you look back and you think, there were no blow dryers.
That's quite mind-blowing.
I know, it is. We had overhead dryers all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, and when they first brought out blow dryers, it was like I was in London and saw the first ever straightening iron, GHD. Yeah. It was astounding. It just revolutionised our life.
Yeah.
You know, we got to Australia, didn't have them, and we're waiting for them to come.
Yeah.
You know? It's like seeing electricity come out. I've been through so many things. When you talk about it, you think, oh my God, it's so long. Sorry.
I love it. Yeah. No, it's really interesting. I think it's really, I think we really need to see that, you know, the formation and the progress and the changes that have happened in the industry. I think we've really, you know, something that we need to remember is that history. And like you're saying, gosh, I can't imagine a time without a blow dryer. You know, that was something that I had in my apprenticeship, and I wasn't that far after you, really, you know.
You had rollers.
Yeah.
I remember them and they were just using these things with hot air blowing out of them. We're going, wow, this is crazy. And a Denman brush, you know, we'd never seen a Denman brush.
Yeah.
You know, what they were doing with it and the time they'd spend, you know, like cutting on, using appointment cards to cut your really hard lines underneath and all this sort of stuff. It was really, to me, was mind blowing. It was just brilliant to watch. 2 days.
Wow, what an amazing experience to be there with Cecilia, to say, come along and join us. That's incredible.
Yeah. And for me, that was because we have plane? Yes, I had to stay there. And I think I was earning about $28 a week or $30-something a week at that stage.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had to get an airfare home. So I had to con my parents into paying for that, and booked 2 more nights accommodation at the People's Palace in Sydney. It was just,
Yeah. Wow.
but, it was very well worth staying there. It was great.
Yeah, wow. That would have been just magic. I can't believe you did that. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that one. I love it.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's one reason, that I'm doing the newsletter as well for the region, and it's going really well. And I think that's one reason that and one of the biggest things that I have recognised, during being part of the hairdressing world for 33 years now, sort of in the region, and also only 33 years, yeah. And also, doing the education and being a trainer for TAFE and companies and things like that. I think one of my biggest things is, and one of the passions that I have, is that we really need education here, because it's so hard. And one of the things is, it is so financially hard. It's time hard because we've got to take time out of the salons a couple of days. So financially, again, the impact on the salon with clients and things like that. We've then got all the distance with travel. It's just such, not only financially, but time-wise, it's such a huge commitment to go and do education. And maybe that's why competitions really thrived here for a long time. I don't know.
It's a great feeling of competition. Some people got a bit too serious about the competition sometimes. But, you'd go to Newcastle and you'd see, busloads come up. And Newcastle was, as you know, huge competition-wise, and the standard was astounding. It was way above Sydney. But, you would always have the salons come up from Sydney to compete in Newcastle, because a win in Newcastle was more important than a win in Sydney. It was just so big. I mean, Shane, for so many years, was the reigning Pan Pacific Salon of the Year, and it's all coming to Tamworth.
Yes.
To win a trophy, you had to beat Shane's salon to actually get any. And that was a big thing. You knew you could have gone and competed nearly anywhere in the world once you got past Shane.
Yes, that is so true. So much respect for that, part that, she was the reigning champion, that salon, for such a long time. They were amazing, but they put the effort in too, so they deserved it. And I think that's a real key thing that you said, that where you and Shane had the discussion about the fact that the country standard is, if not better, than the cities, and I think that's a real key factor that we need to recognise, perhaps in this region a little bit more, that we are as good,
Oh, absolutely.
Just because we're in the country doesn't mean we need to be laxed about our profession. Yeah.
I think because most people, you have to think you've got more to prove than just sit down and rely on it, sort of stuff. And that's what came, and that's what I found. I thought, I'm sick of everyone. I still had clients who go to, I mean, no disrespect to Benny Tognini in Brisbane, because we're closer to Brisbane than Sydney.
Yes.
And they've been clients of Benny's for 30 years. But of course, when the borders were closed, they couldn't get there. I'm very happy now. They don't go anymore.
Yeah. So you picked them up, yeah.
And not by, the borders are open now. They could go again if they wanted to. But no, it's just not, it's not the same. It's no consistency and this sort of stuff. And the pricing is astounding.
Yeah.
Charging. And I think they probably have to, but I don't think sometimes, I think they're charging way just because of the name. And that's always been the case.
Yeah.
Not blaming that, but it happens all over the place. So.
It does, yeah, it sure does. No, that's amazing. So I guess we've touched on a few things, that some of the biggest changes that you've seen over the years. It's probably been the education, do you think? And then
education technology. Like with COVID, it doesn't matter how much you can watch on Zoom or YouTube or whatever, it still doesn't replace being able to stand and talk to someone about what they're doing. Watch it all. I know it's all free now and it's great and they do some fabulous things, but it still doesn't replace being able to watch someone do something and talk about it.
Yeah, or have that one-on-one training where you're in a room and you pick up the smallest things. When I do some training in the salon, it's sometimes just about where they're standing, trying to cut, and if you're repeating something off a video, that's fair enough, but then your body position and all those kind of things isn't something that you can learn on that. Sometimes it's a bit of a gap.
If you're watching something where they don't move the camera to the right position, you're out all the time. And I found adjusting, like I'm getting old and my shoulders aren't as flexible as they used to be, and these adjustments have to be made for that. When you're flexible, it's so much easier. When you get older, your arms don't go into the positions they should be in.
Yes,
but they quite often get there, so that makes a difference too. You've got to counter for that, but it still works.
Yeah, interesting. And do you think the blow dry is one of the biggest things that you've seen? Isn't it interesting how it's a flip? Because even in my apprenticeship, those standalone hair dryers for sets were everywhere in the salon, and we had blow dryers, of course, but it's now a flip. To find a standalone dryer for a set is rare, and then blow dryers and the technology. I do still have one.
So do I. We still have to have one in the salon. We've got one lady who has a set, or two that have a set, and that sort of thing. But obviously the blow dryer, the biggest thing, absolutely. I mean, precision cutting by Sassoons, which just revolutionised the world. It was that in combination with a blow dryer. Straightening irons, close. As I said, we're Salon International in London, and the GHD presentation, we spent a whole day just reforming onto the same line to go. I think we went through 7 times in a day just to see what they were doing, and you'd be an hour wait sometimes to get in.
Yeah, I love the straightening, but I'm a little bit, I don't know, on the fence about the fact that it took away a lot of our blow drying techniques and things. You don't see the volume blow dryers happening and then using the straightening irons. It's a blast and then a straightening iron. And I'm still, I don't know, maybe I'm old school and I can't let go, but I just think that real technique of blow drying and getting a good blow dry and then touching it with the straightening irons, fair enough, but that blast blow drying, I don't know, I think it's a shame that it's it probably saves a few wrists, that's true.
But now it's back. I mean, I do what I call Hollywood hair a bit, and that big bouncy blow dry, there's nothing like it. Really, and people are wanting it again now. They're sick of it.
Fantastic.
And a couple of different blow drying techniques like twist drying and this sort of stuff, which is great. But change wise, blow dryers definitely. Straightening irons just changed everything a lot. But the blow dryer definitely. I just remember it was just amazing to see them use it. I picked it up and I was holding it in my hand and holding it on my blowing. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, what do you do with it? It was fabulous to watch. Because I think you're holding Christopher Brooker's blow dryer, and you think if you drop it, there's probably none of the work.
Well, that's true. Pressure's on.
I think from memory, they actually got them made specifically to dry their haircuts off.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. Big wrong. That's how they led me to say that they actually designed and had someone make something to work like that.
Wow.
It's pretty rough. It worked. Yeah. So,
fantastic.
That's definitely changed.
So you've had, back to sort of the business side of things, you've had a few touches on different experiences with salons. You've been the employee, you've had your own business, you've had your own employed staff. Now you've got Shaboo with a setup of the Rena chair. What do you think? There's been lots of challenge through business. I hear it all the time. People get in contact with me for the newsletter as well, even just discussing with salons I know in the region just about how business is a real challenge these days. What do you think's been the biggest challenge for you? And I don't know. Tell me about what you think.
Well, obviously, always trying to remain profitable.
Yes.
And I think a lot of staff don't realise that when the grits come down a lot of the time, you're the one who doesn't always get the wage that week if you're having a bad period. And that's, you're only as good as you or the staff that work for you. I think a lot of them don't realise that when the boss is having a bad week, they're the one who goes without a wage. I always found myself, because I was a male, I had to be the provider. I had 3 daughters who all needed to be educated. Through the period of life, my wife's had a couple of bouts with cancer, so she's never been able to be a wage earner as such. So I had to remain really profitable. But what you'd be competing with is, you know, a little girl who, oh, daddy's bought her a salon and she's got a boyfriend and, you know, she can have a little salon and open up and doesn't have to be profitable.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So they're the things, like, it's that competition between being profitable and still keeping your integrity and battling people who go in. You see it all the time, you know. You don't see it so much with male hairdressers because they're there for a purpose, but with a lot and some female hairdressers, it's a bit of a hobby.
Yeah.
And that all makes it a bit difficult to compete in a small town because they don't know. Now they're a lot more serious about it because I think their rents are different and all this sort of stuff. They've got to be competitive and they've got to be serious about it, which puts it back on more of a better playing field. That's always been that, you know, the staff thing, you know, as I said, I'm happy now because we have a couple of schoolgirls at work. I say, look, you're willing to come and work. I'm not offering you a job. If I help you get a job somewhere else, that's great. I'm at the stage where I like my own time a bit, you know, we're pulling back. I take a Monday off now, do a few things. And it works for all of us, you know, it's good.
Yeah.
And so we do have some kids helping, but you do have to be a bit careful. And I'm probably not the age where I should be having too many young people around because you expect too much of them. And that's not always right. And I think it's just the demographics of it. I know I've got a 12-year-old granddaughter who, when she comes to help me in the salon sometimes, she's more productive than some teenage kids.
Yeah,
you know,
interesting.
She's been brought up by a mother who's a hairdresser. She's brought up by a mother, you know, and that doesn't mean that. She just knows how to clean something and she knows how to think.
Yeah.
You know, whether they
take a bit of initiative.
They lose it later. I don't know. It's just really hard. It's what everyone is saying, and I'm sure there's great kids out there, and it's really hard. We've always had great success with male apprentices. You know, they just, you know, in a country town when I first started, oh my God, you know, I worked for Merv, was married with children. John was married with children. That was his brother. And we had two other male hairdressers in the salon and I'm not picking, they were both gay. And that was a hard country town. And then when you know, a normal male, it's really hard work for kids like that because there's still that stereotypical comment that's made.
Yeah.
And you've really get over that. But, you know, these guys do it hard in the country if they stick there. And I know here particularly was very hard. You know, I never thought about not being awful. I didn't know what gay was. I just went to work in a hairdressing salon because my sister got a job there for me. I soon found out after a while there was a little bit, I was just lucky I had a good straight down the line boss, you know, who didn't take any of that shit. And the biggest problem I had, actually, I was a really strong anti-smoker. And so was he, because those days, every salon, the client had an ashtray and the hairdresser used the same ashtray. I was sick most of the time from cigarette smoke and I refused to scrub out ashtrays because I couldn't stand the smell. And I was lucky my boss was the same. He didn't expect me to because he thought they were all filthy. And that's another big change, you know, everyone used to smoke. My God, you know, just, you know, in your apprenticeship, was it like that?
Oh, yes. I had, in my apprenticeship, I had two bosses that were in partnership in the salon, and one was the opposite and one very much was. And she had this saloon doors right near her station. So we had a little bar fridge and she had an ashtray on the bar fridge in the staff room, which was, you know, the size of tiny little staff room. And she literally would just start a haircut or whatever she was doing, go through the little doors, have a couple of puffs, go back to her client, didn't bat an eyelid that was it. And mind you, back in the day, to get the stain off from tint, remember we used to use the ash?
No, I couldn't do that.
Oh, well, we had plenty of it from my boss. She was literally chain smoking. And, yeah, she'd use the ash out of her ashtray to clean up the edges of the colour, you know. Like, and you think about it, that's just really quite filthy, isn't it?
My Friday morning job was always to go across to the Australian Hotel, and we had our own beer jug, and all the drainings out of the taps would be into this jug. I'd go over and get the jug, bring it over to the salon, and then we'd dilute it down and use for setting lotion.
Oh, my goodness, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Urine water setting lotion was always great.
Goodness me, they think maybe, we must have had good immune systems back then.
You couldn't smell it over the cigarette smoke, so it didn't matter.
Yeah,
But
that's
also, you'd have each operator would use the same ashtray as the client. That all,
yeah,
oh my, you know.
yeah. It was almost like when you signed your apprenticeship papers, you lit a cigarette back in the day, wasn't it?
Celebrate, yeah, basically, you know.
Yeah.
And when you look back now, you think, oh God, that is a huge change. You know, think about it.
It is, yeah.
You know, it's just,
which is amazing because you think about everything that's flying around a salon anyway, you know, the chemicals and the hairspray. And back then there was a lot of hairspray, you know, the good old Silhouette Black Death. Remember that?
Oh, no, yeah. I
It
still
was like
sell it.
concrete. Yeah.
We used to have
It was
air
great.
compressors. Did you ever have air compressors on the ceiling?
No.
Hooked up to air compressors?
No.
We used to have a compression line that ran along the top of a wall that had an air compressor in the back room, and then there'd be a plastic tube come down, and you'd have like the little lacquer sprays, and you'd just use it like you're in a car yard, you know, like just spray, like, you know.
Wow.
You didn't even have to pump them. You had your own air source to do it.
That's quite inventive, wasn't it?
Yeah, you'd have to clean out the head of it with a wig pin that would just clean it out every night. It was soaked in metho.
Yeah.
Your job at work, you'd have to be ready. You know, like I didn't start to work till 9, but I'd have to go in at 8 to make sure the lacquer sprays were ready for this one senior to start at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, wow.
Never.
Yeah, and I think one of my main jobs in my apprenticeship was actually cleaning with a toothbrush the back of the chairs to get all the lacquer build up off them. Yeah. It's quite amazing when you look back, isn't it? These things. Yeah.
So just coat them like they're in a spray booth in a hotel, in a car yard, in a panel beater's yard.
Yeah.
And then trying to get that out. Like, I mean, it's still always now, I still use huge amounts of bicarb soda in my salon because it's the only thing that can take the lacquer out.
Yeah, it dissolves it. Yeah, that's right.
Like a piece of timber, and then you put another layer on it and it disappears. You just go white and you put another layer on.
Oh my goodness, it's quite amazing. So I'm thinking, what would you like to see for the future of the industry, do you think?
Oh,
it's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a big question. Look, I think the problem is it's going to break down a lot because of home hairdressing, home salon. It's going to be very hard to keep salons in the streets because of rents and all that sort of thing, and so many people opening salons from home. I don't disagree with it. I just don't know how it's going to affect the industry long term. If you sucked a hairdressing salon out of every town, there'd be a lot of empty shops. You know, and I think until people get back into working a bit more cooperatively, as we do a bit, and I know there's a bigger salon in Tamworth does the same, and they're mostly older hairdressers who've done all their fair share of that, but they still want that stimulus of being with a group of people. That's about the only way I think it will work. You know, you don't necessarily want to work from home. I don't want to have hair through my house and all this sort of stuff. But I also don't want to work as long hours as I've been doing. So if you can do that with a group of people, you know, it's fine. Like, you know, Coral's away Monday, Tuesday. Liz works Monday, I'll do Tuesday. We work it out. And now that COVID's relaxing a bit, we did have another girl called Andy who would have fitted in, but she's moved. You could probably do another one person. And like our salon's open 3 nights a week, but I do 2, Liz does 1, Coral does 1. You still have long opening hours and you've got to fit into the clientele. I work all day Saturday because it suits people. Saturday afternoon, my busiest book out time. I finished at 6 o'clock last night. You know, tomorrow I'll go to the dentist and that'll be fun. And do that, but I still have Mondays to get that all done. But a lot of these young that open salons, they just automatically take Monday off, which is good, but it's still not giving them a chance to build their business up very well. We know by Liz being Monday, she picks up a lot of clients who can't get a haircut on a Monday.
And I think that depends on your setup too, doesn't it? That what day, because if you've got an apprentice, you actually need to have 2 days off consecutive. You know, it's around our awards, some of that stuff. The thing that I often wonder with the home hairdressing is, are they going to put apprentices on? So where are our new ones going to come from? You know, they're sole operators. It's a lot trickier. You know, I do have a girlfriend who's a sole operator that's put on an apprentice. She's got a shop front, and she's had to do some really really think about when she's on holidays, what happens with the apprentice, all of that dynamic is really, really tricky. So she's worked it out, and they have a great sort of relationship with how they've worked it out. But I do wonder if there's going to be so many moving away from this shopfront sort of look to home businesses. What is going to happen with apprentices? What's going to happen with our apprentices? And we're already short.
Oh, we're short anyway. And when they cut the apprenticeships back to 3 years, I was just mortified. Like, I had a girl come one day, and it was interesting because she came in, she applied for a job, and I said, "What can you do?" And she said, "Not much." I said, "Sorry?" She said, "Oh, no, I can't do much." And I said, "Well, how come you're through and you're finished?" She said, "Oh, well, the girl I trained with, she needed the money, so she signed me off so I could get the money and that sort of stuff." She said, "Oh, you're really good. You can be signed off now." So they got their payout, whatever that was, and that's fine. And then you find the next week they put another one on. So this girl had no option because she couldn't get any work. She went and opened a home salon. And I'm not saying everyone is of low standing in home salons. I'm definitely not saying that. But there are too many who can run their level of work to suit their clientels at home that aren't good at what they're doing.
I think that was one of the biggest things when they brought us back from 4 years to 3 years. And then there was this area of signing them off at 3 years, or even 2 years, some of them. I think that's it's been a little bit of a quality problem across the board.
Sure.
Yeah, we need to be looking at, perhaps that. And it's a real tricky situation, but I do worry for the industry because I think it's such a brilliant industry. There's so much you can do. You don't just have to be in a salon. There's so much you can do. There's such a great career, and both of you and I have been in it for so long and still got the passion for it. I just would hate to think that there's not the new round of apprentices coming through, and what does that look like? It does concern me.
I love the change in the industry that when I first started, if you were out at a social function, anyone that came to the salon wouldn't speak to you because, you just weren't respected enough to be spoken to, that sort of thing. Now, if they don't speak to you, they're in fear of not getting, or the industry has changed where hairdressers carry a really strong social presence. And I like that. I love that because I think we deserve that because, I've had kids come to work and I'll say, "What do you do at night?" I said, "Go home and watch the news." You've got to have something decent to talk to your client about the next day, even if it's only the news. You've got to do some research, read your magazines, read your books, do a bit of homework, but if it's just watching the news so you can discuss what's coming up, you've got to have something to talk to people about. And I often, people say, "Don't you get sick of talking about food and gardens?" I said, "No, because I'm not hurting anyone. You're not picking on someone, you're talking about what you're growing in your garden." I mean, my Instagram page is more about my garden than probably anything else. We talk about food a lot. We swap recipes, this sort of thing. And never do we pick on anyone. We're not gossiping per se. We might pick on the latest celebrity chef, but, and that's where a lot of that has changed. It used to be a gossip fest. I hated that. I like to talk about what people are interested in. You do your questions, find out about your new client and see what they're interested in. Jot it on their card when they come in next time. "Oh, how'd you go at the last, horse event or something?" And I think, "Oh God, he's brilliant." If you've got it on the history card, it's easy.
Yeah, we don't have that good a memory. It's just that we have a good card system, isn't it?
We've got a good card system, that's it. But that was one of the other changes where your social power went from having none to having quite extreme. Social in which you became very influential in a lot of things. The amount of time I give advice on interior design, clothes, and yes, because I'm interested, but I also study it.
Yes.
Watch things. This morning I'm watching cooking shows and I enjoy watching it, but there's a lot of social power now with hairdressing, and I'm worried a lot of these kids don't have that because, I had a client come recently who was disgusted because the girl doing her hair spent more time on Tinder while she was doing her hair than what she spent doing her hair.
Oh, so wow.
Tindering whilst trying to do her hair. That's not good.
Yeah.
So how do you go to that, So,
that's right. That we've got to keep it about the client, and I think you're right about the gossip thing. I always get a little bit vocal when someone says, hairdressing's just a gossip industry. And it really bugs me. I always say my comeback is, okay, so when you're observing this, is it the hairdresser that's doing the gossip or is it actually the client?
Yeah,
we're a captured audience. We have to be there. We are stuck with them. Yes, we generally stop talking. We're just going on with our job, yet that conversation's happening in front of us, and to shut it down is really difficult mid-sentence. But if you're watching and you're observing properly, we soon change that conversation and it becomes back about something to do with,
name that's not going to cause a problem with someone else in there. And we've all been caught by it, like you said that. No, I didn't say that. That client said that and I couldn't shut her up quicker.
Yes, there is a big difference.
Causing any trouble.
Maybe that's the thing, those soft skills of communication and understanding people and having communication and conversation is something that's really missing and needs to be built up again. Might be going back to the big blow dryers. We need to have that conversation about teaching people to have a conversation. Yeah. Interesting.
It's other things. It's that home industry thing. Then I don't know what will happen with the shop fronts and the non-employment apprentice and this sort of stuff. I think it's going to be a real worry eventually.
We need to watch this space. Yeah.
They used to be an assessor of colleges in Queensland, and I think she lost her job because she wouldn't lower her standards. They just wanted one passed, and she just said, "I won't do it," and she just left because she said they were just dropping the whole standard to facilitate passing enough people to get their money, and that's really sad.
It is, isn't it? There's so many avenues there that we need to be looking into, I think. So having a look at it, what do you think your secret to longevity is then? How long have you been officially doing hairdressing?
50 years.
50 years, that's amazing. Congratulations on that, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Which month will it be 50 years? Has it gone 50 years or is it this year?
No, I think it's gone 50 years.
Yeah.
I started with 15 and I'm 66 now. So and I started my apprenticeship partway at the end of year 10. So so 51 years. So longevity, driven by debt, generally. That's what I say. It's not one of those things. I mean, you have to make a living. I don't know how to make a living elsewise, and I don't think I could do it otherwise. And it's good when you never leave an industry because it's cyclic. Everything goes in a cycle. The circle is just slightly different the next time around. And it's a stage where you've forgotten a lot of stuff, and then all of a sudden someone goes, "Oh, hell, I remember that." And it's back to you. But it is that thing about it's cyclic. But when you leave an industry and come back to it, I think that would be hard. I've never left it. So it's just been an ongoing thing where you build up. And again, getting back to Robert Bauman, he always just have this thing to say is you've got a bag, fill it with your tricks and never leave your bag at home. And that's the industry. It's all these little tricks, that you learn and they're amazing. And then you think, "Oh, hell, I remember that." And you go back to it and it's really good. So yeah, I've got a few years left yet because I still have a debt. Always will. And I've had a lot of fun. And as I said, met some super interesting people. I just still have friends that I've made, like, I was on the phone to Richard Kovnowski the other day, and he's at the Gold Coast and still communicate with him regularly, and this sort of stuff. Guys like that, it's just brilliant. Like, got friends in Sydney that own salons that we've met and done things. And it's been really good. They stay long-term friends, and they all, when you get back to it, we all do the same. We all have the same problems. And it's, it's just interesting. And if people get really sour with the business, it's sad because they move and do something else. But I had a girl in yesterday, she's in her late 40s. She hairdressed for 12 years, has done interior design, all this sort of thing. And she said, "Sometimes I just want to get back into it."
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So this passion's still there for her. But she said, "I'd be too afraid now. I wouldn't know how to," she said, "I couldn't foil well enough to go back into it." And I said, "Well, you just learn, put yourself back into it." So that's, longevity is having to do. I thought at one stage I wanted to go off and do, but people won't pay you for landscape design in a country area where you want to do it. You can't be Paul Bangay. And it's still a sideline. Love my garden as much as anything. And as I always say, at the moment I do hairdressing to pay for my garden. Not really, but it sort of gets that feeling. I love to get home and play in the garden and all that sort of thing.
Oh, and you do have an immaculate, spectacular garden at the house and at the salon. So I can see that it is a passion and it's great. And I think that sometimes that's our longevity, don't you think? Having a little side thing.
You've got to have a balance.
Yeah, that you've got to come back to something else that's your passion.
We showed dogs, and then our girls were, the oldest two girls particularly did a lot of dancing, and this sort of thing in that time, which made it easier because they modelled for me in hair comps. So you sort of have this inbuilt, fashion parade, which is really easy. And now I've got grandkids, and you have to sort of spend some time with them. And we've just bought a little caravan, which we will do some running around in shortly and that sort of thing. So a group of friends who are all about the same age are off to Lightning Ridge in a few weekends. That'll be interesting.
Awesome.
I've never been to Gundawindi, so God knows what Lightning Ridge is like. So
you'll have a ball no matter where you are.
Once they've learned how to pack the red wine in the caravans, that's amazing.
You'll be fine. Good cheese platter. So what do you think would be some standout memorable moments for you?
Ooh,
definitely Sassoon by the sounds of it. That experience was a pivot, yeah.
Yeah, being invited to compete in the Pan Pacific Styling Championships in Sydney, which was really great. It was one of those black tie gala events at the Hilton. Was wonderful. Really enjoyed it. Got beaten. Wasn't so enjoyable. But it was really good fun. It's one of those things where they had 10 of Australia's top long hairdressers, 10 fashion people with dresses and 10 models, and you balloted. You got an hour to prepare the hair and half an hour to do it. And that was exciting. That was a big thing. At that stage, we were competing against a girl called Fiona Haslop from Wollongong, who was, she'd just come back from the World Championships in Las Vegas. She was being coached by a guy called Norman Ironside. So it was a pretty hard graft to get there. And she was brilliant. But, I got second. I was really happy with that. That was a big thing. Yeah. The competitions, all that sort of stuff, when you realised you were working at a really high standard in a little country area, and that was pivoted up by Shane and all that sort of stuff. But you knew you could go to Sydney, and that's what that thing about was, a win there was a great win. You had no fear that you weren't competitive with a lot of people, in the world. I remember once trying to a guy called Ray O'Connor. Do you know Ray in
I'm not sure. No, I don't think so.
And they're called Emils. He was always one of the judges that when he came up with Warren Nesbitt, there was Ray O'Connor and all those guys. He and I tried very hard to get Norman Ironside to coach us to attempt getting into the world team. Norman wasn't interested. He had Fiona and that was his bubble and that was fine. And that's his business. But those sort of things were great. Just the realisation that you actually were as good as other people in the country and some of the world was great. The pivotal things. The Sassoon thing was just stayed with me all the rest of my life. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's amazing.
You could never pay for it.
No, and it was so spur of the moment, like it wasn't even planned, and that makes it even more exciting.
If I had my hand up, I would never have done that.
Exactly. So there's that whole put your hand out and ask a question. Never know what comes from it. Yeah.
And that's what he used to say. The only bad question is the one you don't ask.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's a really good one.
That's what Brian Conn was always good at, at a seminar. Like
yes.
He was the man at the back of the room asking the questions. I just sit down the front.
Yeah. That's so true, isn't it? Interesting dynamics. So I'm just conscious of your times. So I'm going to wind it up with a couple of questions. Yep. So what do you do to look after yourself in the hairdressing world?
Not enough.
Pilates.
I've got body issues for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do enough myself. I really don't. While I was speaking, I don't know whether they've rung back. I was actually trying to get an appointment for a massage this afternoon or tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I won't do that unless it's outside 3 o'clock because my grandson's playing football, so I want to watch him on TV. But I need to get back to that. I don't do enough physically to look after myself. I know I don't.
You were doing Pilates, so you're still doing that here and there?
No, I started working Tuesday nights.
Oh. Gosh.
So okay. I've walked this morning, and we're getting back into that. We're taking the caravan out to Carnarvon Gorge in August. So we've got a train to walk that. So that's making me do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do enough I mean, you should when you're younger, go to the gym, you know, because your arms do wear out. You know, I have a neck problem that affects, I can't wear rings on these hands because those two fingers play up. It's old hairdressers, you know. Yeah, I don't do enough. I don't have massages regularly enough. I was on holidays a few weeks ago and I just didn't know anyone to go to at the coast. So I thought I'll do when I come back. So
Yeah.
we came back. My father-in-law passed away. So it's just been crazy going through all that, going back to a bit of normality. And yeah, like today, it's raining. We'll watch football. I'll go down the street and buy a few things, and I'm going to I owe people a heap of pickled cucumbers, so I'm going to go and buy that. Do those. Love cooking and that sort of thing.
Fantastic. So, yeah, and entertaining. You're a great entertainer.
They're fun, you know, but the body wears out, and I think I was never trained on how to stand or how to hold a pair of scissors properly, anything like that, you know. And
so,
you know, there's scissor craft now and all this sort of stuff that never existed when I was young. You know, so the kids are so much luckier now. Their careers should last longer and be better.
Yeah, you know, and just an awareness, you know, an awareness of nutrition, an awareness of body, and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, I think you're right that these young ones should be embracing it, because I've certainly got some issues from all my years too. So what advice would you give to someone that's starting out in the hairdressing industry?
In the industry, as far as an apprentice or as a business? Apprentice.
Either.
Yeah, suck as much information as you can get and just volunteer some of your time.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a boss that's willing to give you something, don't whinge about spending a few minutes with them out of your own time.
Yeah.
Because it'll be the best thing you can ever do. You know, business-wise, get all the advice you can from the right people. You know, get a good accountant, talk to the tax department before you start. They're always good to have on your side. You know, we've had issues in times past where if we hadn't have had a decent relationship with the taxation department, we could have been gone. We had a major blunder with an accounting firm once who told us we didn't need to pay GST. We had it all there. We went, well, that's good. You know, we went out and spent it, and then they come back and said, oh, no, you do pay to pay it. So that put us behind. And if we hadn't have had a great relationship with the tax department, we could have been really screwed. But there's a lot of information out there to be gained from people that you can get by just asking, you know, this sort of stuff. And it's too easy. You know, these kids, if they get a job and get an apprenticeship, just don't be I'm clock watcher and I've got to be there. People will take advantage of you. That will happen always, and that's unfortunate. But if you've got the right person teaching you and that, you'll get all the benefits. You'll have a great time.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice, twofold for that. Yeah, so I was going to ask you what's something for business. So we've covered that as well. So that's quite wonderful. Yeah.
I'm unfortunately, like, to hook up with you this morning, if my wife hadn't been able to, and then get my daughter to come around and do it too, it's completely useless because I've never had time to learn. It's like I garden. I don't have a hobby outside that. I've never played golf. I've never done anything like that. Not that I wanted to, but you've got to have some balance, because when you give up, you're not sure what you're going to do. You know, as I said, kids now are lucky. They can get on a computer and do a Zoom and this sort of thing, where for our age, it's not that easy. So I'll get a bit more onto that now, you know, this sort of thing. So,
well, look at you. You've done it.
No, Deb and Amy did it. It took 3 of us. And it was your microphone. That was
No, it ended up being me anyway. So there's nothing to do with your skills.
First world problem, you know, these days. Right, you know, and it's really good work.
How fantastic is it that we can do this kind of stuff? Like, I just think it's wonderful, taking full advantage of it.
Eldest daughter and her family have just, 2 boys and husband, left on a trip around Australia last week, and they've only gone. They're only in Brisbane now. But, you know, we'll get to the stage we will have to do a lot more FaceTiming and that, because those sons are going to grow up so quick while they're away that if you don't talk to them, you just don't see them. You know, and we don't embrace FaceTime or Zoom as much as we should.
Yeah. You know? Well, you've got some learning to do, see?
You did right.
Fantastic. Is there anything else you wanted to add or talk about today, do you think?
No. This is really good, because it's nice to go back and reflect, because you don't often do it. You know, like someone, one day you should write your memoirs, and I went, ooh, hell, there'd be some interesting things there. But it is interesting when you think about, like, the first time I saw a blow dryer, I'd forgotten what that was like. You know, and today makes me think about that, and it's really interesting. You know, I remember my dad used to talk about the first time he ever saw an electric light bulb go on. You know, and that sort of thing. And it's nearly that sort of thing. Like the first time I picked that thing and it had hot air blowing out of it, I went, oh my God, and they're pivotal moments in an industry that a lot of people won't ever see. They just take it for granted. It's, I never take a blow dryer for granted. It's good for so many.
I'm going to look at blow dryers in a totally new light as well. Yeah, and it's interesting because, like we said, there's not that much really difference between, your career, like gap with years in your career and my career. But it's amazing just how much, I didn't even think about a hairdryer never existing. It just seemed to be something that we had from day one. So I think it's been a fantastic chat anyway, but also to have those key things brought up with us. And it is a little bit of a history piece of, gosh, think about this didn't exist. We used to do this and now we do that. I think it's fantastic that we've got that now. So I really appreciate your conversation.
Got a collection of stuff at work. I talked to you about things like the really old-fashioned perm rods. I've got clients who bring them to me, like I've got one of the old carry-around hood hair dryers. God knows what I'm going to do with them. Somewhere because it's too much of them. But, there's just things like that. You get it out and they're the really old, hard clip-over perm rods. Haven't got anyone ever. People used to wind their own perms with it, with Tony.
I think you need to put a little addition onto the salon and have a museum. That's what we need to do. Yeah.
It's called dust. I can see. For the Pioneer Village, I might take it over there.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah.
I go there, but they collect it all from and bring it to me, and I'm thinking, oh hell, But the hairdryer, the carry around one with they had the electric cord and the hood and the whole thing.
Yeah, I was going to say I've been given one of those more recently. A friend of mine found her grandmother's and was like, "Oh, can you do this?" And it's just a little, almost looks like an old hat suitcase, and it pops out.
It
still works. Yeah.
Does it? I can even turn this one on to try it.
Yeah, it still works. It's amazing. Yeah. So even those things, I think it would be quite eye-opening for our younger generation to go, my goodness, how easy they've got it.
Those perm rods over to tape so they could have a look at them, but I don't know whether anyone perms now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an elective these days. Yeah, so it's still around, but it's an elective. Yeah.
I love the fact that we can now start to charge as much as we like for perms because we say they don't make the stuff anymore. And, trying to get decent perm rubbers is a pain in the butt.
Yeah, perm rubbers. I loved a perm. I can remember in my apprenticeship, we had 2 basins and I'd have 2 hoses and I'd be standing there pretty much 10 hours a day, rinsing 2 perms all day. Yeah.
Spiral perms. Oh, my God.
Oh, yes. We used to have the competition. For spiral perms, we had a competition when we took the rods out, how many counted the rods to see who did the most rods in one head of hair that day.
And you're getting paid $95 for it if you were lucky.
Yes. Yeah, that was big money. Yeah.
I have 2 clients that come from Brisbane every year or so to have a spiral perm because they can not find anyone in Brisbane to do a spiral perm.
Fascinating. See, I love all that old. And I love that the mullets are coming back.
Oh, my
I don't know if you're a mullet man, but I love a mullet and they're back.
I'm a good mullet. I must admit, getting back to my grandson playing football, we watched him play football on the coast today, and some of those mullets on the football field, and a lot of those guys, as he calls them, are Polynesian, so they're the big fluffed mullets. They are insane, and generally with the ends bleached.
Yep. Yeah.
Radical.
Loving it. I love it.
Sure a good mullet or a bad mullet. I'm just still on the fence about that one. I think there's good ones. Miley Cyrus's I love.
Oh gosh, yeah. I'm very tempted to do a Miley Cyrus actually.
You could do it.
I'd love to. Yeah.
I think you need to do some mullet classes because I think there's a lot of people out there need them.
Well, I don't know if you find it with your grandsons, but my son, I'll turn up at home and he's got 5 of his mates here with my clippers and they're doing mullets on each other anyway in my kitchen. So yeah, they're just staying on each other.
Training. He went and bought his own clippers and I saw him on Facebook and I said, new haircut? He said, oh, I just tried a bit. He's gone back to short now because he can't go back to boarding school with it like that. But, some of them are dreadful. Some of them are brilliant. So.
It's funny, isn't it? I love that they just, let's have a go and they just do it. Yeah.
I'll clip it off if it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's right. I suppose there's alternates, isn't there? All right, I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay, no worries. That's been great. Thank you.